When I turned 83, I thought I had a pretty good handle on what life had to offer. I'd lived, I'd experienced, I'd faced my share of ups and downs. But there's one decision I made, a choice that even now still weighs heavily on my mind like a stone. That was the decision to move into a nursing home. At the time, everything seemed to point to it being the right call. My family fully supported it. They reassured me, painted a picture where I'd be comfortable, well cared for, and surrounded by professionals, people who were supposed to make my life easier. I believed them. I put my trust in the promise of a more comfortable existence. However, the moment I actually set foot in there, settled into that new life, a harsh reality began to unfold. The truth was starkly different from what I had imagined, far removed from the assurances I'd received. Perhaps, right now, you're considering this option too. Maybe for yourself, or for a loved one you care deeply about. On the surface, it might look like the safest path, the most logical step when health isn't what it used to be, when self-care becomes a challenge. But before you make that final decision, I desperately want to share 6 truths with you, 6 profound regrets that I wish anyone had told me before I made that fateful move. Because once you step through those doors, everything you once knew, everything you took for granted, changes forever, and getting back what you give up, the precious things you trade away, might just be impossible. Please, stay with me patiently until the end, because what I've learned from this painful experience might save you, or someone you love, from making a choice that is significantly harder to reverse than you could possibly imagine. Let's begin this reflective journey. Part 1. Regret over lost independence. Regret number 1. Letting go of my own autonomy. What shocked me most after moving into the nursing home wasn't the small room, wasn't the pre-planned meals, or the unfamiliar surroundings. No, what hit me hardest was the sudden, jarring loss of control over my own daily life. Before, I had freedom, a freedom that seemed simple but was incredibly precious. I woke up whenever I wanted. I ate when I felt hungry. I spent my days as I pleased, reading, watching a show, or simply sitting quietly by the window. If I wanted to take a walk to clear my head, I just opened the door and went. If I felt like cooking a favorite dish, I went into my own kitchen, did it my way. But the moment I entered the nursing home, all those everyday choices were no longer mine to make. Everything was built around someone else's schedule, a predetermined system. Breakfast was served at a fixed time, whether I was hungry or not. Lights went out at a designated hour, regardless of whether I felt tired or wide awake. Even the simple act of stepping outside onto the porch for fresh air required approval or assistance from someone else. I vividly remember that first morning there. The bed wasn't mine. The room felt foreign, cold. I looked around, searching for my favorite armchair where I used to read the paper, searching for the familiar stack of books beside my bed, searching for the comforting items that held the warmth of home. But they were all gone. In their place were bare walls, a generic layout devoid of personality, and a heavy, quiet sense that I wasn't the one in charge anymore. In that precise moment, the bitter truth sank in. My freedom had quietly slipped away. And the longer I stayed, the more I had to adapt, not because I wanted to, but because resisting, demanding, became too exhausting, too futile. You start accepting what's given. You stop asking to do things you're capable of doing yourself. Gradually, you forget what it felt like to decide for yourself, even about the smallest things. If you're thinking about a similar move, ask yourself with absolute honesty, are you truly prepared to give up those small choices? Those everyday bits of self-determination, the things that make this life feel like it's truly yours? Because once you hand them over, getting them back is harder than anyone will ever tell you. It's an invisible loss, but one that eats away at your spirit, day after day. Part 2. Regret over being left behind and loneliness. Regret number 2. Being left behind. Watching life go on without me. One of the most painful and difficult realizations after I settled into the nursing home routine was recognizing just how quickly life outside those walls continued to move on. And seemingly, how little space there was left for me in its rhythm. In the beginning, when I first moved in, my family made sincere promises. They said they'd visit regularly. They'd call often. They'd make sure I never felt alone. And for a little while, they truly did. My daughter stopped by every week. My grandchildren would visit on Saturdays. For a brief period, I still felt like a part of the world I had left. I still felt that connection. But then, slowly, inevitably, those visits started becoming less frequent, the gaps between them growing longer. Phone calls began to replace those warm, face-to-face conversations. Their weekends became busier with work, with their own plans. Holidays came and went, marked more by promises of maybe next time than by actual shared moments together. I will never forget the feeling of sitting in the common room one Thanksgiving afternoon. My eyes kept drifting towards the entrance, hoping, praying to see a familiar face walk in. But the room stayed quiet. Just a few of us older residents, sharing the same unspoken hope, watching a door that never opened with the person we longed to see. The truth isn't that my family stopped loving me. Not at all. They simply got caught up in the currents of their own lives, work, school, endless responsibilities. And because they weren't here, weren't witnessing it firsthand, they assumed I was okay, that I was being well looked after. But what they couldn't see, couldn't feel, was how deeply that silence permeated my soul. They didn't know how the absence of those cherished connections slowly transformed into a profound, gnawing loneliness. I remember one evening, holding the phone, debating whether or not to call my son. Would calling make me seem too needy? Too dependent? Would it make him feel guilty? In the end, I put the phone back down, not wanting to be a burden, not wanting to cause him any trouble. It was then that I realized, this was my new normal. Waiting, hoping, and trying not to take it personally when the waiting and hoping led to nothing. If you're considering moving into a nursing home, ask yourself this. Are you ready to face the possibility that even the people who love you most might start to forget just how much you still need to feel included? Need to feel like you belong in their lives? Because when you're no longer physically present in their day-to-day existence, fading into the background becomes all too easy. Shift to a slightly more direct tone. If you're still watching and finding this valuable, please leave a comment below just to let me know you're still here listening. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us create meaningful content to inform and inspire. Now, let's continue. Part 3. Regret over losing purpose. Regret number 3. Losing the reason to wake up each day. When I packed my bags for the nursing home, I naively thought I was just changing my address. I didn't realize that, along with changing my residence, I was also giving up my daily sense of purpose. The small things that had unknowingly nourished my spirit. Back home, I had routines, tasks that needed doing. I had things that required my attention, even if they were simple. Watering the plants on the porch, brewing my own pot of coffee just the way I liked it, or tidying up the living room. Those small actions gave me a feeling of responsibility, a sense that I was still useful. They made me feel like I still mattered, that my life still had some direction, some meaning. But once I moved in here, those routines vanished. Meals were prepared for me. Laundry was done by someone else. I didn't need to sweep the floor or feed a cat anymore. At first, I thought that might be nice. A break from chores, some actual time to rest. But as the days bled into weeks, the stillness grew heavier. I hadn't realized just how much those small tasks had kept my mind active, had given me something to do, until they were completely gone from my life. I saw it happening to the people around me too. People who once had energy, who found joy in simple tasks, now spent most of their time sitting in silence, waiting for something, anything, to happen, for some event to break the monotony. There was a gentleman named Harold, 85 years old, who used to be a skilled mechanic. At home, he could fix anything, from lawnmowers to old radios. His hands were always busy, always tinkering, always creating. But here, there was nothing left for him to fix, nothing for him to tinker with. He once confided in me, "I feel like my hands have forgotten what they were made for." And I understood exactly what he meant. When you lack a purpose, however small, to strive for, the mind begins to wander, to drift aimlessly. And the body eventually follows that lead into lethargy. You start to feel like you're just passing time, not truly living it, a feeling of existing, rather than a feeling of being alive. So, before you make this decision, ask yourself, what gives your life meaning right now? What are the things, however small, that make you feel like you're still contributing, still in charge of something? Because once those small roles disappear, finding new ones in a highly structured environment like this is not easy. It requires an extraordinary effort that not everyone can muster. Part 4. Regret over rapid health decline. Regret number 4. Watching my health fade faster than I ever imagined. Before I arrived at the nursing home, my physical condition was actually quite good for someone in their early 80s. Of course, I wasn't climbing mountains anymore, but I was perfectly capable of cooking my own meals, cleaning my house, and taking short walks around the neighborhood. Those small, everyday activities, like grocery shopping, doing a few stretches in the morning, or simply walking from room to room in my own home, had kept me steady and feeling relatively strong. But once I moved in here, everything shifted dramatically. Initially, I welcomed the convenience. Meals delivered to my table. No more scrubbing pots and pans. Someone always nearby to help if needed. It sounded like a relief. A welcome easing of burdens. But I failed to recognize the hidden trap. The more other people did for me, the less I moved myself. And the less I moved, the weaker my body became. This decline didn't happen overnight, but it happened steadily, relentlessly, gradually. My legs grew stiff. I spent more and more hours just sitting. Getting up from a chair became more difficult than before. Then one day, I realized I was gripping the armrests tightly just to stand up, an action I used to perform without a second thought. The strength I had worked to maintain for decades was slipping away, faster than I ever thought possible. And I wasn't alone in this experience. I saw it in others all around me. Residents who once walked confidently later relied on walkers. And then, eventually, on wheelchairs. There was Lorraine, an 82-year-old woman who used to take brisk power walks every single afternoon. She once told me, "I'm not slowing down just because of my age." But just 3 months later, I saw her waiting for the elevator, leaning heavily on a cane. She looked over at me and said, "I don't know when it happened, but I feel like I've aged 10 years in just these few short months." And that's exactly how it felt. When your body isn't challenged, isn't regularly put through its paces, it begins to retreat. Muscles soften, endurance fades, and that lightness, that spring in your step, becomes harder and harder to find again. If I had known beforehand how quickly this physical decline could happen, I would have pushed myself to move more. Even on days I didn't feel like it, I would have walked those long hallways more often, stretched more diligently, refused to just sit back and let my body slow down. So, ask yourself this. In a place where almost everything is made easier for you, will you still have the drive, the internal motivation, to keep yourself strong, to maintain your physical strength? Because once your body stops working the way it used to, getting that function back is a much steeper, more arduous climb than you probably realize. Convenience can be a double-edged sword, and sometimes the price is your own physical well-being. Part 5. Regret over loss of privacy and dignity. Regret number 5. Giving up privacy. And along with it, a piece of my dignity. Before the move, I had a space that was entirely mine. A place where I could close my door, sit in quiet solitude, and go about my personal routines without interruption. It was a basic right to privacy that I had always taken for granted. But when I entered the environment of the nursing home, that sense of personal space gradually evaporated. From the very first day, I felt like I was constantly being observed. Staff came and went according to their schedules. Rooms were checked on routinely. And the concept of being truly alone became more of a distant memory than an accessible reality. Even the most private, intimate activities, getting dressed, using the restroom, taking a shower, often required the presence, assistance, or supervision of someone else. It wasn't the fault of the staff members. They were kind, they were just doing their jobs. But it's incredibly difficult to articulate what it feels like to be treated like a patient. To be spoken to as if you're no longer capable of making decisions for yourself. When you've spent an entire lifetime being independent, managing your own affairs. I remember standing by the bathroom door one morning, wanting to take a shower but having to wait until someone was available to assist. Sometimes it was just a few minutes. Other times longer. Even choosing meals felt restrictive. If I didn't care for what was being served that day, there were very few, if any, other options. And when it came to clothing, there were days I had to ask permission just to wear the outfit that felt right to me. Then there's the matter of roommates. Not everyone is fortunate enough to have a private room. You might end up sharing your small living space with a complete stranger. Someone whose habits, noise levels, or health issues make getting any real rest feel impossible. I was luckier than many. My roommate was generally respectful. But others weren't so fortunate. I heard stories of sleepless nights filled with snoring or shouting. Stories of constant tension simmering in the very space that was supposed to be a place of rest and recuperation. No matter how many family photos you hang on the walls, that space never truly becomes yours. And with every moment you have to wait for permission. Every time you're interrupted unexpectedly. Every instance where your personal boundaries are overlooked or disregarded. A small piece of your self-respect, of your dignity, fades away. If you're considering this path, ask yourself, can you accept giving up that absolute personal space? The sanctuary where you can be fully, privately, unapologetically yourself? Because once that space is no longer yours to protect, getting that feeling of autonomy and dignity back is not easy. Shift to direct tone again, if you're still here and finding this valuable. Please comment, number 5, below to let me know you're still watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Your support helps us create great content to inform and inspire. Now, let's continue. Part 6. Regret. Overthinking. Leaving was always an option. Regret number 6. Thinking I could leave whenever I wanted. When I first arrived at the nursing home, I told myself it was just a trial run. Just a temporary stay. If it didn't feel right, if the place wasn't a good fit, I could always go back home. That was my initial thought. A comforting belief that made accepting the transition easier. But what I didn't anticipate, what I completely underestimated, was how quickly the very idea of leaving would start to fade, becoming less and less of a realistic option. At first, I truly believed I had choices. But time slipped by. My house sat empty, uncared for, gathering dust. The bills kept piling up. My children started making decisions in my stead. They cleared out old closets, sold pieces of familiar furniture, even talked about renting the place out. And then, when I finally gathered the courage to voice my desire, I think I want to go home, I heard the hesitation in their replies. Are you sure, Dad? Will you be safe there alone? Maybe it's just better to stay where you are. They weren't being cruel. They were genuinely worried about me. But that concern, slowly but surely, morphed into a kind of passive resistance. And suddenly, I wasn't even sure I could manage on my own anymore either. You don't realize how quickly your confidence can erode when you stop living independently. Months of not cooking for yourself, not cleaning, not walking significant distances, it changes you. Your body weakens. Your mind starts to doubt its own capabilities. I met others there who felt the exact same way. They had moved in thinking it was temporary, just for a little while. But time passed, and the prospect of returning home felt farther and farther away, almost like an impossible dream. There was Marvin, 84 years old. He used to say all the time, "I'm just here while my knee heals up." A year later, he was still there. His house had been sold, and leaving wasn't even a topic of discussion anymore. That's the reality nobody tells you up front. The nursing home can quietly, insidiously become permanent, not because you're physically trapped, but because every small change, every increased dependency, makes reversing course significantly harder. If you're considering this step, ask yourself with brutal honesty, are you prepared for the possibility that leaving might not be as simple as just walking back out the door you came in? Because once you've settled into that life, getting out might require more than just a decision. It might demand a strength, both physical and mental, that you never expected you would need. Conclusion. Looking back on it all now, I don't regret growing older. Aging is a natural part of the human experience. What I do regret, what gnaws at me relentlessly, is believing that moving into a nursing home was the only path forward. The inevitable choice for me at that time. I stepped into that place hoping for comfort, for safety, for a better way to live out my later years. But what I didn't foresee, what I couldn't comprehend then, was the immense cost, the profound losses I would endure along the way. My independence faded, my voice grew quieter, less heard, and my sense of self, the identity I had painstakingly built and nurtured over an entire lifetime, felt like it was slipping through my fingers, dissolving into the institutional air. This doesn't mean that all nursing homes are bad places. Absolutely not. Some provide essential care, critical support that many people genuinely need. But for me, in my personal experience, what I had to give up felt far greater. far more significant than what I received in return. If I could turn back time, if I had the chance to do it all over again, I would have fought harder, much harder, to stay in my own familiar space. In my own home, I would have explored every possible avenue for in-home support, researched ways to get the help I needed without sacrificing my freedom, my autonomy. Because once you're inside that system, the life you knew, the familiar things that nourished you, they don't come with you. So, if you find yourself standing at that crossroads, if someone you love is facing this difficult decision, I implore you, please stop and think deeply. Don't just consider the convenience, the superficial safety. Think about what you, or your loved one, are truly leaving behind. The familiar routines, the daily choices, the small, quiet freedoms that give life its richness, its meaning. They matter more than you can possibly realize. Until they're gone, thank you so much for spending this time with me, for listening to my story. If something in this video resonated with you, touched a chord, we would be honored to hear about it. Please leave a comment below and share one thing you're taking away. Or perhaps one change you're considering making in your own life or for someone you care about. Your voice matters, and your story just might help someone else navigate this path more thoughtfully. If this video helped you in any way, please show your support by clicking like, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it. Your engagement helps us continue to bring honest, helpful content to those who need it most. We deeply appreciate you being here. And we'll see you in the next video.